everybody. Welcome to another video from the Greater Love Declaration. Today we're going to be talking a lot about the Church of England, and with me I'm joined by Ian and Tim. So just before we start, we'll introduce ourselves. My name's Tom Brands, and the three of us are writers on the Greater Love Declaration, but for me, I'm the Ministry Director of the Evangelical Fellowship of Congregational Churches, and I also serve as the Chairman of the Affinity Council. Ian and Tim, do introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name's Ian Paul. I'm Associate Minister at St Nick's, which is a church in the city centre in Nottingham. I'm also a member of the General Synod, and I've been elected from there onto the Archbishop's Council, which is the sort of executive committee at the centre of the Church of England. But I also, in my spare time, do other things like go to conferences and write books and do research. Oh, and a blog.
Don't forget the blog. My name is Tim Vasby-Burnie. I'm Vicar of St George's Church in Shrewsbury, which is, I guess, a very standard Church of England church. We always do more people and more families, but seeking to teach the Bible, pastor people, and involved in various levels of the Church of England. But that's technical details.
Great, thank you. So it's great for me as a non-Anglican by conviction and by background. For me, I'm hugely ignorant, and I guess lots of our viewers might not know and might have lots of questions. So I want to ask you just some really basic questions about the Church of England. Can you give us an overview of the big issues, particularly about marriage and identity and human sexuality, that are so key for the Greater Love Declaration? What are the big issues going on in the Church of England at the moment?
Well, if I just respond, I'm glad you confess your ignorance. I'm half Irish, and in relation to the troubles in Northern Ireland, there's a phrase from the 70s I remember, which is, if you're not confused, you don't know what's going on. And the Church of England is a pretty confusing place. It's confusing for people who are part of it, like us as well. And the reason for that, unlike many of the churches our viewers will be part of, it's complicated in a couple of directions. One, it's complicated upwards because we have dioceses and deaneries and diocesan structures and general synod and so on. So there's lots of layers above the local church. But also it's complicated because it's sort of siloed as well. Because, I mean, for example, people might not realise that each of the 42 dioceses are legally independent charities. So the danger of the Church of England is we end up in all sorts of silos. And I think in relation to marriage, what it means is that when you sort of move up and down the hierarchy, and when you move sideways, you actually find a huge diversity of views. Now, it happens the Church of England has got a really clear set of doctrines and beliefs. They're found in the Book of Common Prayer from 1662 and the 39 Articles and the Ordinal, the order of service for ordaining deacons, priests, presbyters and bishops. But I think it's fair to say, Tim might have a view on this, that quite a few clergy and bishops in the Church of England have what we might call a negotiable relationship with the actual doctrine of the Church. So I think the complexity that we're facing, that Tim and I are both involved in, is that the teaching of the Church of England, formally speaking, is really clear. And it says, and it's in canon law, which is actually part of the law of the land, because we're the church established by law, and it says that marriage is, according to the teaching of our Lord, a lifelong exclusive union between one man and one woman. Mm. The problem we've got in Synod is that members of General Synod, members of the House of Bishops, don't seem to agree with that, or they think that you can believe that on the one hand, but you can actually do something else in practice. And it's that tension between what the Church formally believes and what people want to do in practice, which I think is a thing we're wrestling with.
I think I'd add to that, the complexity of the issue is across society, isn't it? The whole society has lost the vision of the goodness of marriage that the Greater Love Declaration stands for, and being an icon of Christ and the Church and all these wonderful truths that are so precious to us and we know shapes lives and societies in a good way. Our society is confused. The Church of England reflects society. We can't silo ourselves off from the community we live in. And so the confusion spreads across the church. And so we find ourselves with some people wanting to change doctrine or change practice, but pretend they're not changing doctrine. And I said to somebody recently, isn't it strange that this person was leaving the church because of me, where I was standing? I said, isn't it strange that it's considered strange for a Church of England vicar to uphold Church of England doctrine? And he kind of smiled at that. And we're asking our bishops to uphold the theology that they swore to uphold when they were consecrated. So there are moves to try and change the practice on the ground, and to create services that look like marriages but aren't really marriages, and lots of kind of definitions being twisted and so on, and we find ourselves in this confusing situation.
That's really helpful. So let's, you talked about these different levels and these silos. Tell me a bit about Synod. What is Synod, and what are the issues going around at the moment in terms of marriage particularly?
Well, the General Synod is a little bit like, it's kind of a version of Parliament. So Parliament has two houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. We have three. We have the House of Bishops, the House of Clergy and the House of Laity. And one of the complexities is they're all constituted in different ways. So the House of Bishops comprises the diocesan bishops plus some elected assistant bishops, suffragan bishops. The House of Clergy is directly elected by the clergy in each diocese. So in one sense, that's the most representative and clearest. The House of Laity is elected, the electoral base is those who are involved already at the lower levels in deanery synods and so on. So, and one of the issues I think that we wrestle with is that we have, given those are elected houses, we do have a bit of a democratic deficit. So, for example, clergy who lead large, growing, thriving churches and clergy who lead small churches, which are declining, both equally have one vote. So there's a democratic deficit there. And also, I have to say, even though I'm a member of it, actually spending your sort of spare time and evenings and weekends attending General Synod is not everybody's idea of a fun party. So you do tend to get slightly eccentric people like Tim and me who get involved in these sort of things. So one of our struggles has been to say, well, look, actually in the Church of England, there are lots of different things happening. There are lively, growing churches who are preaching the gospel and seeing people come to faith. And there are others who are not for all sorts of reasons. And so there is a diversity, and that diversity is actually represented in Synod, but in a slightly skewed way, I think. And in fact, one of the struggles is saying, well, hang on, if the Church of England wants to grow, and I'm on the Archbishop's Council, and our commitment is to see young people come to faith and the church to grow. But if it is, why aren't we paying more attention to those who are experiencing that growth?
That's helpful.
I think I'd say, Tom, for those who aren't part of the Church of England, who are just kind of looking on slightly confused at us who are inside confused, because the Church of England is established by law, what General Synod decides is part of the law of the land. And so we've got the situation where the government has obviously changed the law about marriage, but the Church of England's definition of marriage between a man and a woman is still part of the law of the land. So there's a contradiction at the heart of the law. But that means any denomination, any group that says marriage is between a man and a woman can say, well, the law of the land via the Church of England represents that. So if the Church of England if we go more liberal, then I think the kind of protection that the law gives for other churches would be weakened. So other churches do pray for us because I think the mission of the church across the UK would be weakened if the Church of England is weakened.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much for that. Is it, for people listening, is it possible for the 39 Articles and the canon law definition of marriage to change?
Well, that is a fantastic question, Tom. And you'll ask three different clergymen in the Church of England, you'll have 5 different views on that. My own view is that it can't change, actually. And I say that for 3 reasons, really. One is that when you look around the world at the Anglican Communion, there are Anglican churches in other countries, those that have changed their doctrine of marriage, and that's caused tension in the communion, have only done so when they firstly changed their foundation of who they are as a church, when they've actually moved away from the Book of Common Prayer. And the Church of England has never done that. Okay. I think the second reason is that when you look at all the variations in practice in the Church of England, for instance, I mean, people might have a very Anglo-Catholic, a very ritualistic church along the road from them, and that might be what they think the Church of England is. It isn't. It's actually a huge variety of things. But what I find really interesting is that people who want to do something different like that, who want to be more Roman Catholic, they can't do it with the Church of England's liturgy. They have to borrow the Roman Missal. And that itself is evidence that the Church is pretty conservative constitutionally. And the third reason is a slightly technical one, which is that you can look on the website for the canons of the Church of England, the regulations, the legal regulations of the Church of England. And Canon A5 says the doctrine of the Church of England is found in its formularies. That is the 39 Articles in the Book of Common Prayer and the Ordinal. So if somebody wants to change the Church's doctrine of marriage, it's also going to have to change the fundamental definition of where the Church of England finds its doctrine. If it does that, you've got to ask the question, is this still the Church of England?
That's really helpful. Thank you both so much. So for the Greater Love Declaration, I think just this conversation is great, having two people from the Anglican Church and me from outside it. I'm more confused now, which suggests that I understand. But we're all together from different denominations, different groupings, standing up for the goodness of marriages between one man and one woman for life. This is God's way. This is the best way. Thank you so much, brothers, for joining me, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.